Hey everybody, here with another World of Warships replay, once again in the Tier 8 Japanese premium cruiser, the Atago. You can see it's a pretty small match. I think I was playing in off-peak hours and so there weren't very many people on. Matchmaking does funny things when it doesn't have a large player pool to draw from. This is incidentally the cause of most complaints about the matchmaking in both World of Tanks and World of Warships. You tend to find it's worse on less populated servers like NA West in Tanks, or during off-peak hours when there's not many people on. And of course, World of Warships being a recently released to the public game, there's not very many people in high-tier ships. As you can see, pretty much all the ships in this match are premiums, and so it does fuck up the matchmaking some. Once again, my Atago is not fully kitted out. You can see I'm still rolling just with the stock paint job, which is not an effective camouflage, it's just there for looks. And of course I'm still running the hydroacoustics and all the non-premium consumables. Now I did end up swapping this out, and in future replays, I'm not sure how long it took me to do it, but in some of my replays, the more recent ones, you will see me using premium consumables, camouflage, and of course the anti-aircraft ability, which is, I find, much more useful than hydroacoustic. Hydroacoustic's just way too situational, you really never use it. Now if it was on destroyers, it would be a lot more useful because it would enable them to brawl in smoke with enemy destroyers. And it would also make more sense because, you know, destroyers typically were convoy escorts in the Atlantic and were the ones that would carry sonar equipment. But who am I to criticise Wargaming's game design? I'm sure it's that way for a reason. Probably because destroyers are so hard to detect, it would be a bit broken if they were able to sneak up on people and then use hydroacoustic as well. Now, instead of going through the actual channel on the east side of the sea point, I decided to go through the west side, which is a little risky in a larger ship. I don't have the maneuverability of a destroyer, even if I do have the speed of one. But I see a chance to maybe get away with it, as the enemy seem to be fixated on pushing into sea itself. Now, one thing I didn't mention in my previous video is that although there's no actual gun sight interface displaying in replays, oh look, it is actually in the game. Now I have to press shift to bring that up. It's not tied in with the actual use of the gun sight for some reason. I assume Wargaming will get around to fixing this, they just haven't done it yet. Now I could press shift every time I go into the gun sight just so you guys can see how much I'm leading targets by, but ultimately I don't think it's worth the effort and the constant clacking in the background as I push on my shift key. So for now, you just have to guess. It's mostly a thing you get a feel for anyway. The best way to learn to lead targets is to just fire a couple shots, see where they land, and once you play a ship enough, you'll get a feel for its shell velocity and its guns. Hopefully that'll be fixed though, and other things I'd like to see them include in the replays are the actual rudder shift indicator, so you can tell exactly how hard I'm turning and when I initiate the turn. Particularly in battleships, it's important to see when turns are being initiated because the response isn't instant. And also, perhaps the actual speed that I've set my ship at, not the one it's currently doing. Now, I ranged the enemy Atago here with an HE salvo, which I had loaded in case of destroyers. Speaking of the devil, there is one. But he's not going at the speed I expected, and so while my first salvo was too far astern, my next one is too far ahead of him. And it actually takes me quite a while to land any decent hits here. Pretty shameful. Normally I'm a lot more accurate than this. In fact, rarely do I even need to fire ranging shots. I'm typically on first time. I think that in this case, the fact that there was a destroyer right next to me, potentially able to torpedo me, and also I was taking fire from the Atago there, and then this guy, I think it kind of spun me out a bit, so I wasn't able to focus. Now, this guy's firing HE. What did I say last video about firing HE at other cruisers? It's not a good idea, and this guy's about to find out why. Fires some torps ahead. He seems to be so busy focusing on his gunnery that he won't notice the torp launch, and indeed, he didn't, and many puppies just don't. Presumably he knows that I have torpedoes since he's in the same class of ship as me, but look, he's not even trying to evade, he's not turning, he's not slowing down, nothing. So I safely ignore him, dodge his own torpedoes, and down he goes to the bottom. This Warspite's coming towards me, I don't have time to reload HE, but I do get some light spalling damage in there before he sinks to flooding from our carrier. I've now got an Atlanta charging at me, but you'll notice the Atlanta, and this is bringing up the point I said before about its 5-inch guns, they're very good at killing destroyers and at harassing fire with high explosive. He's firing AP at me, and you can just see the rounds bounce off me like water off a duck's back. And this is a cruiser. You can imagine what it'd be like if he was firing at a battleship. He wouldn't even be damaging me. My own shots aren't placed very well here, but I've got plenty of time to get my eye in because he really just isn't affecting me at all. He's not hurting me, he's not knocking out any of my secondary guns, he's not really doing anything. Really the only problem here is if he either switches to HE and burns me, or if he remembers he has torpedoes. I'm well within his torpedo range, which I believe is 4.5 kilometers. Very, very short range torpedoes. He does finally knock out one of my turrets, but I've still got plenty of firepower with which to finish him. A second turret goes down, and it turns out, actually, no, I didn't have enough to finish him. He did kill me there. I think he had some help, though, from the other Atago to my southeast. In any case, I did nearly kill him. Had my gunnery been a little better, I would have. I don't know why I was having such a hard time finding his citadel. Normally I can finish Atlantas in 2 or 3 salvos from any cruiser. They're very, very weak. But I took a risk, didn't pay off, and now we get to watch the rest of my team finish the match. We've got a huge advantage over the enemy. In fact, our team have only lost myself and a lower tier cruiser. I think that is a Murmansk. Yes, it is. Meanwhile, the enemy have a Sims, 2 Atticos, and a Warspite. So we do have a definite advantage here, but it may take us a little while just to finish off the game. We are accruing a huge amount of points over the enemy, so as long as we don't all suicide in at once, we should have this no matter what. But obviously, it's preferable to end up killing as many enemy ships as possible, more XP to share around for everybody, obviously plenty more XP for the people who get the kills, and it just ends the game faster. Now, a long-held belief in World of Tanks is that capping gets you more XP, or that killing doesn't get you more XP. This is not true in World of Tanks, and I'd hazard a guess it's not true in World of Warships either, and unfortunately for our Sims, he just got burned there. More damage done by your team means more experience to get shared around at the end of the match. You'll notice in the Capfast match where basically the match is won with no damage being put out and a cap straight away. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. That nobody gets any XP. Even somebody who has done some damage, or whoever was in the cap, they get fuck all. And the reason for this is because damage wasn't done. So damage is always preferable to capping, but not to the point where you throw a win. You shouldn't be focusing on really trying to get the most XP, I know, but unless it's an absolutely dire situation where you're forced to cap out, you should be trying to finish off the enemy tanks. Now, with that said, no doubt, if I go back through my own replays, I've got hundreds, probably thousands actually, of matches where my team could have capped out, had a clear advantage over the enemy, and threw it away because they drove one at a time into a well-entrenched enemy tank. In those situations, it's always a good idea to have one guy sit on cap, just as a safeguard, while the rest of the team go out hunting. This way, no matter what happens, you're assured of victory. And if he happens to cap out before you can kill the last guy, shit happens. But, you know, completely forsaking the cap to suicide is a bad idea, but so too is just diving all into the cap at the start of the match and not firing guns at enemies. So there's a fine balance to be achieved there, and I think people get too hung up on little things, really. They either get too hung up on the idea of getting the most possible XP for themselves, and reminder, you only get good XP if you win usually, so winning is the best way to get good XP, or they get too hung up on getting a fast win at the expense of all else. It's just, people don't think, they really don't think. Now the enemy are equalising things somewhat. Of course we did lose that Sims there, and now they've managed to cap C as well. One of their cruisers is pursuing our carrier, although he's sent out his dive bombers to defend himself. And the majority of our ships are within range of the Warspite and the second Atago, but if you look at the sort of disposition of them on the minimap, a couple of them are actually well out of the way. They're either behind islands or they're heading in the wrong direction. We are about to pick this up off of points soon. We're sitting at 770 points to 170. But like I said, at this stage it's basically just a case of shortening the game. Nobody wants to be sitting around doing nothing. These guys aren't really engaging each other. The cruisers are out of range and the Warspite is just running, it looks like. Since this match isn't quite over yet, I may as well take a moment to talk about Citadels. Just as a quick reminder to anyone who hasn't seen me talk about it on previous videos, Citadel does not refer to the superstructure. It doesn't mean this thing. It means the areas of the ship usually at or beneath the waterline, the engineering spaces, so underneath the funnels, where the boiler rooms and turbines are, and the magazines underneath the turrets. So sort of this stretch from here to here of the ship, mostly this area because it's thinner armoured, these are a bit thicker and a little harder to hit, that's your Citadel. That's where you want to be hitting ships. Now on destroyers in particular and some cruisers it extends all the way to the deck, so it's very easy to hit. The low tier Japanese cruisers are well known for this, but on your larger ships, especially battleships, most of which is underwater, it is at or below the waterline, so you've got to try and angle your shells in. But that's a Citadel, and that's where you want to be aiming with AP. Superstructure you want to be hitting with HE. If you hit the superstructure with AP, you might do a little bit of damage, but it's really just ineffective. It's not likely to really impact the enemy ship at all. Coming up to the end of the match here, just a few seconds left to go before we scoop up the win, and it looks like the enemy ships are going to come away from this alive at least. Pretty nice simple game. I died pretty early, I was a little careless, but I did pick up my 1.